The teacher understands strategies for creating organized and productive learning environment and for managing student behavior. So this competency is sort of twofold. It's about understanding the strategies for creating an organized, productive learning environment to create the environment in which the students are going to feel safe and able and willing to learn, and strategies also for managing student behavior. So understanding strategies to create this wonderful environment, and then to manage student behaviors, which might not be commensurate to what we expect in the classroom, right? To those behaviors that we need to happen so that learning can take place. Analyzes the effects of classroom routines, procedures on student learning. Now, we typically are super highly focused for procedures and routines with the elementary kids because it's so necessary, because they have a short attention span and are likely to get off task, off topic. Having routines and procedures in place help make it easier for them to continue with the different activities that we have to have in order to hold their attention and to keep them focused on what needs to be done. But that's not to say that we don't use routines and procedures later on in the middle school and in the high school as well, which we do. I had a particular routine. If you were absent, then the day after you were absent, you already knew, because we had discussed it, practiced it, we'd watched other people go through the absent binder, where I put extra copies of anything that we did, extra examples. Like if we made something tangible for their journal, there were going to be extras there to use as an example for their own work. So that was a procedure and a routine that I had in place when students were absent, so that they didn't miss a beat, so they could get all of the things that other students, that their peers received on the day that they weren't there. You have to have procedures and routines, and not just willy-nilly for the sake of it having them, but like for things in your class that demand and need it because of the chaos of teaching, to make things less chaotic and more focused, so that we can maximize time for learning time, instead of people trying to figure out, well, what do I do next and where do I get it from and where do I go now? If there are routines and procedures in place, that leaves less room for confusion, which leaves less room for chaos, and it helps you manage the class. A person is going to get off topic when they're bored or when they don't understand and they don't know what's going on, because nobody wants to feel like they're dumb. And so I would rather be the silly off-task kid than to be the dumb kid that doesn't understand, what are we doing and where are we going? If there are clearly laid out routines and procedures, then everyone can participate without that feeling of confusion and less distraction. So B, demonstrates an understanding of how young children function in groups and designs groups activities that reflect a realistic understanding of the extent of the young children's ability to collaborate with others. Now, this one is talking about your grouping, your intentional, specific creation of groups that you think will be most beneficial to the students' learning. That means including diversity, right? A diversity of skill, a diversity of language skill, a diversity of content skill, so that the students can get different perspectives, and different students in the group can model different strengths that they have for the other students. Now, as far as designs and functions and realistic understanding, you couldn't, in a first grade class, have a group activity out of the blue for the first time and have it go so well. The children need practice in groups. They need practice understanding that, like, how groups talk to each other, their specific roles, and contribution. And so having a realistic understanding of young children's ability to collaborate with others. So the younger they are, the more off task, off topic things are likely to get in the groups. And so you have to have, you still can't not like say, oh, no group work for the little ones because they can't handle it. No, we can't do that, because then they get to middle school and they're like not understanding how to work with others or what the goal is. And so the key here is for those that have the young children to make sure that we give activities and projects, assignments that reflects their abilities and that they'll be able to complete in a successful group. So we're not going to have them get together in the second grade and write an essay, but we could have just gone over the parts of a story plot, like what is it called? Exposition, the rising action, the climax, and you can have the kids come together and, have them come up and with a storyline and plot it on the map together. And it would be something where they would be able to functionally do as a group at that age group. Later, when they're in high school, it would be more appropriate to say, okay, you guys get together, y'all are going to write a story, and that would be, they would totally be able to do that. But just realizing that with younger kids, the ability to keep yourself on the track yourself and follow through is not as solidified as our older kids. And so we have to make sure that the types of activities that we are creating for them are things that are doable and realistic for them at those early ages. So like the EC through 3 or 4, I would say fourth grade is not even pushing it, but we're still going to have group work. We're just not going to have super complex things where we give them the reins completely. We're going to practice each of them having a role, completing their role, assessing themselves so that they understand and they're like getting, it's like swimming in a large pool. You don't do laps as soon as you start having swimming lessons. You do little things and you learn how to float, doggy paddle in place. So small things. And that's what B is about. Organizes and manages group activities that promote students' ability to work together cooperatively, productively, assume responsible roles, and collaborative skills and individual accountability. So you can't have the students take accountability if you're not actively participating in the roles, right? If the only time you participate is like, okay, guys, you're too loud, and that's the end of it. So making sure that they understand that the groups are like a team, and then if your team doesn't participate or doesn't do their end, it hurts the overall performance and really is unfair. Making them accountable for their own performance is really important. And that sort of comes in with another one of the routines or procedures. Like a routine that I had was after we had group work, everybody assessed the group's work, like how did the group work together? And let me tell you, some kids are brutal. They're like, Elena did nothing. She was texting underneath in her book, they will tell you. But also the second leg to that, not just tattletelling on each other, but having someone like Elena fill out her part. What was me reflecting back on my participation and what I added to this group? Like, what did I add to this group in reality? That providing that opportunity for them to reflect on what they contributed to the group is very important. It's important for us to start doing that early so that they always start. That's metacognition. I'm thinking about my thinking about my performance, and having them reflect back and have it be a habit. Like, am I doing enough with my team? And if we begin that early enough, sort of training them with the function of a group, that it's to be cooperative and together be productive, and that if everybody has roles and is accountable, that success is achieved. Recognize the importance of creating a schedule for young children that balances restful and active movement activities. If you've ever taught at an elementary, and where do you teach? What grade level?
High school.
Okay, so but so the little ones are just like, sometimes you can see them where they're at the end of like a 20-minute, little something, and they're ready to bounce. And the great thing is that with technology, there's a lot of really cool kinesthetic content related. I think they're called Brain Pop, if I'm not mistaken.
Videos?
No, not Brain Pop. It's called something else. I'll ask my daughters, because we do. Yeah, they're videos, and they're like dancing videos, but they have to do with content. And especially for the young kids, making sure that it's not, all day long they're sitting down listening to the teacher droning on. They have to get up. They have to make it theirs. It has to be an experience, but not like willy-nilly, in this routine way, a schedule that meets the needs, that balances their need for rest, because they get tuckered out kind of quickly, but also they have a lot of energy, and their attention skills are not, super solidified where they can maintain long periods of attention with their teacher. So just making sure that when the question asked about elementary, that you remember, we have to make sure that in creating a schedule for young children, that we take that I was going to say anatomy, the physiology, like their cognitive development, physical, emotional, maturity wise development into consideration, and make sure that we do provide outlets for them to like burn off steam or energy, or and so that they can continue with their focus on learning and projects. Oh wait, blah blah blah. Active movement activity. So I was just saying, one really great way for ELAR teachers, like reading teachers in elementary, is as the teachers sort of like reading the story, they can act it out at their desks. And it's a really also a great way. So it's like the ducks went out on their morning walk and everybody's standing, but it helps also check for understanding. So the teacher's reading aloud, and if there's confusion, then some people are not going to be doing the correct movements, and you can very easily see, okay, that guy's swimming and we should all be walking at this moment. But it brings in that kinesthetics and allows them, to get rid of some of that energy, and providing large blocks of time to play. Play is very, very important with the young kids. It's important really always. Even the teachers like to play, for projects and for learning centers. So I think the big takeaway is that the bulk of instructional time cannot be direct instruction for the teacher. It just won't work for the young children. There has to be this like breaking and blocking apart of different activities that we're going to do. And maybe now we're going to do learning centers, and it's reading, and there's 5 different centers. You practice a different skill, but each one is fun. Some might be movement, some might be sedentary, but it breaks the monotony, and still you're able to focus on several skills at once. Schedules activities and manages time in a way that maximizes student learning. Okay, so that's another thing that I mentioned before. Remember, I said the routines and the procedures, they're to make our lives easier, the students' lives less frustrating and easier, but also to make sure that we maximize, because that's always the goal, maximizing student learning time, right? So that we don't, if I say, okay, guys, get your journal, it doesn't take 5 minutes for everybody to get their journal and sit back down, because then we just lost 5 minutes and we're out. So making sure that some of the like maintenance type things that we do, attendance, non-instructional duties, that we can coordinate them, and that our transitions or the procedures for transitions between different things. So if you're in elementary, you're going to have lots of different transitions, that those transitions don't in themselves take 5 minutes, because then you, at the end of the day, after 5 or 6 transitions, you've lost like 30 minutes of instructional time. So that's a lot of student learning time. And so making sure that we have effective procedures in between transitions, effective procedures to get materials, to put materials back, so that it doesn't interfere with the maximizing learning time.
Okay. So it's more like time.
Yes.
Okay.
Uses technological tools to perform administrative tasks such as attendance, okay, obviously, but facilitating communication is probably the largest of this. Very, very important for us to be open lines of communication to the parents, for sure. Letting them know, you know, how their kid is doing. For sure, we want to contact them with positive things, but, you know, as need be when it arises, negative things, but facilitating communication and having them know that they can reach you and that you're sort of on the side of the child as far as their success. Very important. And technology makes it just easier for us. I remember before, parents didn't used to have emails. It wasn't regular. Only people who worked for like companies or stuff like that. I started teaching in my first school year was 2003 to 2004. And so if we wanted to talk to parents, we literally just had to call them. Sometimes we would have to mail things home and it was like touch and go, touch and go. But now there are so many ways. There's Remind 101, there's Google, like chat, whatever it is in the email, there's text message. I mean, there's just so many that there's really no excuse for us to reach out if we need support with their child. And we're and to know that we're the best support for them, you know, with their child as well. Works with volunteers, paraprofessionals to enhance, enrich instruction, and applies procedures for monitoring the performance of volunteers and paraprofessionals in the classroom. So they should not be something that's like sort of distractive.
Mhm.
And they also are not, you know, simply to be used as, you know, go make these copies for me or whatever. But volunteers and paraprofessionals are so integral to the success. You know, you just said it right now, you don't even have enough teachers on the campus. Volunteers and paraprofessionals, they fill the gap in instructional, like hands-onness. And so really this portion is you letting them know what your expectations are, what the goals are for the class, and making sure that their activities in your classroom help support that. They don't distract from it, or, you know, especially with the
I had a couple of questions that said, I don't know, it's probably one of the famous ones that they're going to a field trip to the zoo, que I don't know, que the parents are going and the chaperones, que no sé qué, and you know, and it gives you all that. And but the right answer is, it's always the one that the teacher explains to the chaperones the procedures and the whatever it's gonna, you know, whatever you guys are gonna be doing in the zoo.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That conversation of like, this is the itinerary. These are things we need to be careful of. Like, if this should happen, this is what we do. This is my number, you know, making sure that they are appropriately trained, informed of procedures for monitoring, right? The students while they're off campus, very important.
Yeah.
Applies theories and techniques related to managing and monitoring student behavior. So there are lots of techniques for managing student behavior, right? There's positive reinforcement, but we have students that are on behavioral intervention plans, like their behavior is already being monitored, right? And so how do you deal when you see someone and they're like, maybe they're on a bit, but they're like freaking out during a class, they get heated, they get upset. And I think this was one of the ones that somebody brought to my attention. And one was like, have an art or talk to someone about changing the goals in, but the point is that when you notice a student having behavioral issues, first and foremost, you need to find out the cause of that. And if they're already a student that is already under the umbrella of special ed, then we already have a pretty good idea, you know, if there's a trigger. And so what you would do is monitor their behavior and keep a data list of things to try to see if you can find what is the event triggering the student to make them have this behavior, and try to stick with their initial behavior intervention plan. Managing their behavior should not go or be handed off to someone else. Like if you're having issues in your class or they give you a scenario, do you send them to the counselor's office? While the counselor is there to support the children, she is not a specialist in misbehaviors during instruction. And it is our job to make sure that we identify before we send off to other people to try to deal with the issue.
Yeah.
So the theories and techniques is you handle it in-house for sure. You try to identify the issue before moving forward.
I've always thought it, I don't know if it's wrong to think about it that way, like not to make it easy for the teacher.
Right. For
like
sure. Yeah. You don't want to send it. I mean, and the counselor has thousands of students that they're responsible for, right? Like there's like a big from A to M, right, in the alphabet. That's what they divide it with. So you certainly don't want to make their jobs more difficult. Hi, Miss Boone. I'll be with you right in a moment.
Okay.
You certainly don't want to make it more difficult for other people. And we should always try to rectify any issues in class first, right? So observing what's going on, trying new things, positive reinforcements, taking away that triggering effect before you get other people involved is the way to go.
Okay.
And then we have demonstrates awareness of appropriate behavior standards and expectations for students at various developmental levels. So understanding that the little kids are going to get off topic. If you're sitting there and doing an hour-long direct instruction and they're third graders, you're going to have some third graders off task. If they're first graders, it's going to be more of them. If they're kindergartners, no, it's good. All bets are off. But having, reasonable, appropriate behavior standards and also knowing what is developmentally appropriate for kids in the different age groups. Like it's not uncommon, to see girls at the middle school age group being uncomfortable at gym when they have to dress out and have them like comment on each other's bodies. That not appropriate behavior. It's appropriate behavior that they're doing it because at that level their bodies are changing and they feel weird, and so they're to make them not feel so weird, they point somebody else out. It's projection. But understanding that the action that they're doing, it's normal for their age. However, it is not, it's a corrective thing. We have to say, guys, excuse me, all bodies are beautiful. We stop being ridiculous. We're growing. We're all in our growing stage right now. But understanding what sort of trends behavior wise are indicative for the different age groups or grade levels. Like EC through 6, the way that they behave in class, outside of class is pretty typical without the outliers. Okay, Mr. Tawad, we're going to end on 6 today. Oh, wait, no, wait. We're going to end on 6 after I do this last one. J, applies effective procedures for managing student behavior and for promoting appropriate behavior and ethical work habits. One of the best ways to manage and promote appropriate behavior and work ethics is for us to be the best models. And so if I'm like, okay, guys, don't be late, but I'm late to class every day, guess what? The kids are not going to be on time to my class. If me, the one who's telling them, you got to do this, I am the model with which they are learning, even little things like don't be late or don't be rude. So if somebody says something rude to me, I don't have to pop off and say something cute back. I'm an adult and that's not how we do things. And so I'm going to behave in a different way that is going to model for them appropriate behavior. That also includes academic integrity in the classroom, communicating high realistic behavior expectations, involving students in developing rules and procedures. This is very important because School very often feels like it's something that the students just have to do, and that instead it should be their learning experience. Like my learning experience, this is my classroom that I'm a part of. And so one of the parts for the buy-in and to get the students to really start to feel like this is my learning experience is to include them in developing rules and procedures and even consequences, right? Not coming in with this, board of rules and saying you're going to do A, B, C, and D, or things are not going to work out, but saying, listen, guys, this is what we have to achieve this year. And it's going to be tough. We made this much last year. We need to have this much progress. We're going to be reading this many books, but we can do it. And we're going to have fun doing it too. Now, in order to both complete that and have fun, what does it have to be like in here? Like, what sort of behaviors do we have to see? And have a conversation with them. Well, we can't be talking over people. Excellent. I like that. We can't talk over people. Yeah, because if somebody's saying something interrupted, having them take ownership in the accountability and the expectations for their class is important, because you didn't just come in dictating something, you included them. It's the beginning step to this is my education. Like, this is my class, my learning experience. Enforcing behavior standards consistently. That means you don't have favorites. That means I don't care if you're on the football team, like we don't do that in the class. And I will be talking to your coach afterwards, but having that consistency with everyone, regardless, because again, they're watching, the students are always watching us, and we, all the adults and the adults in their lives, are their models at the moment for how to behave in all sorts of instances. So if we allow some people based on who they are or who they know to behave in some sort of ways, then that's going to diminish and start to corrupt that consistency and trust. And you're going to have a lot of people not fulfilling those expectations, because why should I do that? You broke your expectation with me and you let that guy off because he's the assistant principal's son, and so he gets to do whatever, and then it's all willy-nilly from there. So being a person they can trust, I can trust you to enforce the things we agreed upon equally. Using conflict resolution, very important. If students are having an issue, that you don't just met out a consequence and say, oh, he's right, you're wrong. Let's have a discussion. Why did this even happen?
Yeah.
You guys are always working so great together, and now you're throwing dictionaries and highlighters at each other, right? Let's talk about this. Let's go backwards. So conflict resolution, getting students to use their words, getting them to reflect on their accountability in the situation. Like, okay, this event that happened between you and Jim, it took two people. So what did you guys both add for us to get to where we are? And have them look at it at themselves and what they contributed. And these things are not just important for making the classroom run smoothly. They are so incredibly important life lessons that we need the kids to continue to do later when they get into conflicts. And we don't want for them to throw dictionaries or highlighters. We want for them to say, okay, how did I add to this? And how can I get to a resolution? Respond appropriately to various types of behaviors. We want for them to respond, which means we have to respond. And we're going to get all types of behaviors, but they're all watching us. And so if I've had kids in my many years of teaching that I loved all of my students. I don't have one that I disliked, but I did have some that were trying, like where they would on purpose do, some of them might have had ADHD. I don't really remember at this moment, it's a while ago, but you can't, if you're the teacher and John or Sarah are always making noises, even if all the students are like, John, stop making noises, and you also want John to stop making noises, you cannot jump in, even if we have to show them the appropriate way and then talk to John later. Yeah, absolutely. Because they're always watching, even with how we interact with everyone else when it has nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
If they see you being kind, it will, and they like you, they're going to go around trying to be kind or try to be like you, that's just the way that kids are. So,
just the fact that they just want to go to class, like, oh, sorry, I really wanted to come to your class. I'm like, you know?
Exactly. And that makes you feel good. You know what I mean? They should want to go and be excited to go. It's their learning experience, you know? So thank you, Mr. Tovar, for meeting
Thank you.
me. We'll talk later. Remember, continue doing your deep dive of 6,
Mhm.
8, 9, 10, and then 2 and 3.
Okay, so is there gonna be another one later on today, or how is it, or what do you mean?
Not today. I'm gonna have one tomorrow at 6:30. So if you want to
Okay.
join in at 6:30 tomorrow, we'll do one, and I'll do 8 and 9 then.
With this same one?
Yeah, we'll look at competencies 8 and 9.
Okay, sounds good. I'll be there.
All right. See you
All right,
then.
thank you, Mrs. Sauceda. Yes, ma'am. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.